This to my kids all the time. I was like, if I was in school right now, I would have 5 different college degrees.
She knew it wasn't the right Santa because he was African American.
Hi, and welcome to our first podcast of Learning Out Loud. I am Dr. Brandi Robinson, and this is my best friend, Sarah.
Hi.
We're going to go ahead and get started. In this episode, we're going to give you a little bit of who we are, a little bit of what Learner Journey Labs is, and the whole purpose behind this podcast. But our goal is to really just have a conversation and make this feel very conversational from week to week as we talk about different topics that are affecting learning. One of my favorite things that is often said about me is that I'm a little bit of a unicorn because I tend to move around in a lot of different spaces. So my background is in STEM education. So I have a master's in math with education as a secondary area. And so I started my career out as a classroom teacher, teaching calculus 1, 2, and coaching a mathlete team. From there, I kind of figured out that STEM curriculum really needed some more fun because it wasn't very fun to teach and it wasn't very fun to learn either. So at that point, my career kind of started to do this interesting divergence where I started getting into technology, first through graphing applications and trying to find ways to make multimedia and make things that were really interesting to my students. And also at the same time, moving into curriculum instruction and assessment. So that I could be better informed in how to do things. And I wound up going through and getting my doctorate in that space. And right now I work with a lot of tech companies, artificial intelligence companies. I work with universities. I have my own AI ecosystem that I build in, and I do a lot of different consulting work, both in the learning space and in the research space with a lot of my publications. So that's kind of a crash course on Brandi. And that's probably part of why Sarah has given herself her self-appointed title of Chaos Coordinator, because on any given day, there's no telling what my interest is that day. And so my entire day could pivot because I'll have an interesting thought or question, and then suddenly I want to go dive into that. So,
Or you've written a book over the weekend.
Valid, or I've written a book over the weekend. So Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, my degree background is elementary education. I started out as a classroom teacher, and then I was teaching at a school that closed, and Brandi and I were friends, and she had some opportunities for me to help with her in her business, and so I've watched her create her learning framework and create her business, and so I definitely call myself the Chaos Coordinator or the Brandi Whisperer, because again, she'll just come up with a thought, and then I often have to translate it to people that we're working with because she'll leave out key details.
Very valid, yeah. I think when I'm teaching, I'm much more mindful of like the backstory and the context. But in real life, I tend to just kind of blurt something out, and then I'm so used to you being the person who's like sitting next to me, and you can fill in all of those blanks.
Yeah.
So then when I send it to somebody else, frequently I'm like, I thought I was super clear about that, and then usually you're like, actually, here's the 10 things you left out that I connected that you didn't actually communicate.
Right. Or I'll just reply to emails and be like, this is what she really meant.
Very valid, yeah. Yeah, emails are a bad one for me. Anytime it's written communication, I'll just fire off like rapid fire thoughts a lot of times. So it is very helpful when you reply all and kind of clarify that, I think.
Yeah. My favorite is when somebody asked about the time and you were like, it's Central Time, but left out what time it actually was.
Yes, that's a good example of it. Or I get asked the question and I will frequently dive too far into like one side of something because I've got blinders on with how I think. And then sometimes you're just like, actually, they just wanted a really simple answer and they were not looking for like the TED Talk.
Yeah, but it's easy to do. You do a lot, and your brain moves faster than anything that I can think of. So it's easy for you to latch onto something and just run versus sometimes seeing the whole picture.
Yeah, which is why I think we're such a good team, because you do a really good job of kind of being like, let's sit down and think it through. But you never try to like get me lost in the details of whatever I'm interested in. You're just more about like, let's get a plan, or let's get Sarah a plan so Brandi can keep running and Sarah can kind of in the background figure things out.
Yeah, and I'm so type A and I want a list and I want a plan, so it's good working with you because it stretches me into that chaos or let's fly by the seat of our pants kind of moment.
Yeah, valid. So I think one of the things we wanted to address in today's podcast that Sarah's going to help translate for me is the most frequently asked question that I get from many students, colleagues, and other people that I talk to in the research community is, how do you do what you do? And it's kind of this really weird question for me because I feel like people expect this like elevator speech in 30 seconds of how I do it, or some type of like silver bullet, this is how you could do it too. And I think that that's always been really hard for me to kind of answer. So hopefully as we have this conversation today, maybe we'll actually arrive at somewhat of an answer, or maybe someone who's listening will be like, here are the AI notes from listening to you talk, and here's the answer that you should actually give people. That's the 30-second answer.
And we'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah.
So if we had to start at a point, what do you say is how you do? Like, where? Let me try and think. I guess, how have you gotten to this point? Because even when we started out, we weren't doing this many things.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think some of it is innately kind of formative from my teen years. So I went to boarding school at 14, 15, and we took college classes. And throughout that time, I figured out that I really like to be challenged. And so where some of my peers were taking like 4 classes, because college classes, I was over here trying to take 7 because I wanted to learn all the things and do all the things. And so I think I got used to a really fast pace of life and learning speed, because I would just study, and like we had fun and I had friends too, but like realistically speaking, like I just learned how to kind of compartmentalize learning and how to kind of do it in a more rapid manner so that I could be in all the classes I wanted to be in, because I wanted to take the law class and Spanish and then all the math classes. And so I think some of the product, like what I'll say is like, because of that, and then going to college and feeling not challenged in college. So when I got to college, it was like, I'm actually kind of bored. Like I'm still taking 7 classes, but I had to go back and take intro classes for things because they didn't give me the credits. So then I worked 2 jobs and went to college. And so there's just kind of this like pace that I think you're right. It has slowly kind of accelerated through every like phase of life that I've gone through. And I think for me at this moment in time, my kids are older. So I've got a 21-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And they needed a ton of my time when we first met and started working together. And so I was hyper focused on them plus career. And now that they're older, I just find that I'm still looking for that stimulation, which is I think why the past, 2 years, I would say, have really sped up considerably with what I'm doing in different spaces.
Yeah. I think the last 2 to 3.
Yeah, and so I think part of that's just a product of they don't need me as much. They're at dance, my son's in college, and I'm just still, like, I don't feel fulfilled if I'm not challenged. And I think that's been a big part of the drive to accelerate in the past couple of years.
I also think this is something for both of us, is we're both innately curious people, and so we'll catch something and then dive into it. And then that usually ends up you writing a book or creating a new section of your business or really random conversations.
Yeah, I would say that's valid. And I think we're both hyper curious people. And while we have differences, I think both of us like to take something apart kind of and figure it out. And I tend to more like brute force it apart. Like I tend to like want to dynamite it out.
Yes.
And you're much more methodical, like let me take this piece and let me see how they fit together. Whereas I'm like, I'm just gonna blow it up, figure it out, and then we'll go from there. So I think that also kind of does, we fixate almost on things.
Yeah, because there's definitely times when I leave here and then the rest of the night it's running through the back of my head. Or when I ride the Peloton in the mornings, like I tell you all the time, I do some of my best thinking because my mind just wanders because I don't really want to focus on the fact that I'm working out because I don't love it.
Who does love working out? It's not me.
No, definitely not, but it helps with the rheumatoid arthritis, so.
Yeah, valid.
So in the last 2 to 3 years, things have definitely accelerated. Do you think a large part of that was also the emergence of AI?
I do. I think, and I say this to my kids all the time. I was like, if I was in school right now, I would have 5 different college degrees because information is just so accessible at this point in time. And like growing up, I mean, the internet happened for us, which was kind of like what I compare AI to nowadays because not only can I, get information at my fingertips, but I don't even have to Google anymore. So I can have Learner Journey Labs send a web scraper out that will basically search the internet for different information. I can tell it the sources to look at, and then I can tell it to explain it to me in a very simple way based on what it knows about me and my interest. And so I think that artificial intelligence has made that possible. And I think that the ability to learn at the rate that I was doing it manually has exponentially increased, and being hyper curious, what used to take 10 or 15 hours to figure out, I don't know, I'd be like, I'm gonna learn something in Python today so I can do a data analysis. Whereas now I can just plug into an artificial intelligence and be like, can you tell me the code and explain it to me? But at the end of the day, I don't have to actually be the person writing it. And I think that type of accessibility, that type of gating like we have in our product, where I can ensure that the content is correct and that it relates it back to me and my interest, I think is really key.
Right. And it's interesting that you brought up, you don't even use Google anymore because since my son has access to my Learner Journey Lab account, and it's funny because I'll go through the threads and he doesn't Google. He will ask in the thread. Which makes me feel good because we do have gates and things, so it does go to valid sources versus random conspiracy theories and things. Because he is 13, almost 14, but he tends to think everything's real still. He's a sweet boy, but sometimes a little naive. So I like that it's gated, and he can find out the answers of the things that he wants. But it makes me laugh that it's not like Google because I don't think of it in that way so much.
Yeah, and with my 13-year-old, I'm just thankful she's not Googling because we would be on the FBI watch list. So
valid.
Sometimes I feel really comfortable that my system is gated because sometimes her threads, I'm like, ooh, if we type that into Google, that might get flagged because she is hyper curious about everything and all the conspiracy theories she wants to know and understand. So I think you're right that I see the same thing from her. She doesn't go into Google and type something in. She goes and asks ChatGPT, and a lot of times she'll ask it for the website and her thing. So I know she's going to the website, but the actual act of Googling doesn't seem to be how she's developing, and that seems to be a really interesting trend with kids.
Yeah, it really surprised me because he has a combination lock that he locked something with, and the combination that he set somehow got changed, and so he was trying to figure out the combination, how he could reset it. So he went, whereas I would Google that, he went to ChatGPT and then realized that there were 3 columns and 10 numbers in each column, so it was going to be 1,000 combinations. And so he gave up, and then he actually called customer service of the company. And they're sending him a new lock. And we just have to cut the old lock off, so I need to find bolt cutters this weekend.
But I think that's also just sometimes the independence that the kids get when I'm not saying they're not monitored, but B's monitored by you.
Right.
How many 13-year-olds would call a company to do that 10 years ago? So I feel like there's also when you're raising kids responsibly on how to use the AI, I find that it is stretching their maturity some and their level of comfort some.
Right, and I think it's giving them somewhat of a driver's seat in asking and interacting with the AI, whereas Google, you can't interact. You just put in the question.
Yeah.
And it comes up with a Gemini whatever response, but it still isn't the same as if you go into Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT and interact directly like that. But yeah, it was funny. We didn't even know he called customer service until he asked if he could give them our address, which at least he asked before he gave it.
Before he gave the address.
But apparently the customer service guy emailed him the manual or instructions on how to reset it. It didn't work, so he emailed back, and yeah.
That's a parenting win right there.
Yeah.
The independence to be I've tried everything, Mom. Can I now get my address so they can replace it? That's not something I feel kids, I would have done as a kid too.
No, I was really surprised because he was like, "Can I give this guy our address?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he had to go back and explain. But yeah, I think it puts kids or anyone in the driver's seat, really.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's driven some of my interest in the field is my family is very, very neurodivergent. And so I have 3 very different children with 3 very different unique brains. And trying to cater to each child and find the ways to raise them to be independent people has been interesting because the ways that they interact with that technology is very different. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my son is very artistic, so he looks at it from like content creation, from making visuals. Even if he's studying for like orgo, I'll see like the threads in the lab and I can see like he's making visual mnemonic images. You know, whereas Sarah Rochelle is using it to like quiz herself or to feed it information, then she's copying notes from the screen. And like Brianna, I mean, she's just all over the place with it, honestly. Mm-hmm. Most of her obsession is like, how am I supposed to do this? Because the way that I'm doing it isn't how my teacher is teaching it. So a lot of the time, like she was doing something within our math tutor that I'm building right now for ACT and Praxis, and I gave her the job of trying to hack the system. So she was very excited because Brianna loves money. She's very, very motivated by money. So I told her I would pay her for 3 hours to basically try to get it to give her the answers. She just had to keep sending me the threads. So she would basically crack it and get the answer without having to walk through the thought process. And then I would go in and harden it. And harden it, guys, means I would basically try to ingrain the behavior in the AI to not do what she was having it do. And she was the most interesting person with that. And I 100% know where it comes from. She gets it from her mother. But like she was working with it and she was feeding it like, you know, I'm a teacher. I don't need to go through the thought process. And all this stuff, and then, you know, after we had kind of gotten about an hour and a half into it, she just looks at me and she's like, I just realized that I don't solve for X correctly. And I was like, you're in 7th grade, like how are you solving for X? And she's like, it just comes to me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what does that mean? It just like comes to you. And she's like, well, the tutor's telling me that like if it's X minus 10 equals 20, I have to add 10 to both sides. Because our cognitive tutor at Learner Journey Labs, it does train you in how to think. Like our goal is that we can actually teach people how to think. And so it kept forcing her into that pattern. And she's like, I didn't realize that I was supposed to add. And I was like, what have you been doing this whole time?
Right.
And she's like, I just figure out like what minus 10 is this? And I was like, she's like, and then she asked me, she's like, do I need to actually do it that way? And I was like, yes, because when you get to like calculus or trig, it's not gonna just like pop in your mind.
Right, because when you're in 1st, 2nd grade, they teach you what minus 10 equals 20, which is funny because B this year, you know, he was in pre-algebra and he was like, I don't want to get algebra. I don't want to start this algebra stuff. And I was like, dude, you've been doing it since your Montessori days.
Yeah.
It just hasn't necessarily included numbers and letters. But you've been doing it since then. Mm-hmm. He was not happy to hear about that either.
No, of course not, because that's the narrative. But I mean, it was just interesting. So like a lot of when we had that conversation and I kind of looked back in some of her threads, a lot of the time she's trying to figure out like how does like an average person or what is the intended way to do it, mm-hmm. because she finds a pattern and she just latches to that pattern and she never really takes time to consider alternate viewpoints. And so I think that's something that like AI has done that you couldn't Google. Like you couldn't have Google be like, walk me through the thinking of this idea or this concept, right. You know? And she did the same thing in Spanish with like verb conjugations. Like she was doing it very differently. And when the AI was explaining to her, like you gotta find the subject, then you have to find the object, and then you have to determine the tense. And she was like, that's way too much. Like I just know that it's this. And I was like, okay, well your brain is kind of like your mom's and you think really quickly. I was like, but eventually it's gonna catch up.
Right.
So I think there's a level of independence that it's afforded all 3 of my kids, but it's very interesting how diversely they use it. And I think that that's driven a lot of my curiosity, is just watching and listening to other people talk about how they do it is just really fascinating.
Yeah. it's also really interesting. B's school uses a lot of Quizlet and things like that, and he and some of his classmates started a business. Well, actually, one of them started a business, and then they added him on, and they would do these study guides, put it in Quizlet, and Quizlet has an AI setting that generates a Quizlet based off the study guides, and so then they were selling it to their classmates. But it's interesting to see how it's being used ethically now in other education things, sources. So he even had to take a class, and we were told it is now a requirement in Louisiana to graduate high school that you have to take a computer applications course, and part of it is using AI ethically.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because education, when artificial intelligence first came out, we were so resistant to the idea of it. And just, education is very cyclical and it's slow to change. And I think like one of the things that, if you get to know me in any capacity, I tend to be a bit of a rule breaker. Like I don't like rules. I mean, Sarah could tell you guys this. There's 100 different rules. I will cheat at a card game because I just don't feel the need to follow the rules. So in some ways, like artificial intelligence being this like, this is against the rules thing, it was like I wanted to find out about it. And I think that some of that drive is part of how I do what I do. And it's like, so I'm fixated on it and I want to understand like, why is it this bad thing? And really kind of examining it in the early days of it becoming available just through ChatGPT, it was very much like, okay, I can see like plagiarism and other problems and ethical use and feeding a model your data. But also I could see like the power of it. And I think that sometimes I think in 5-year spans, like my husband will say, like I like to have my 5-year plan. And I'm usually pretty good at predicting things. And I think that part of the acceleration in the past 2 to 3 years has been me looking at that and saying like, imagine what this could be in a couple of years.
Right.
Even when I started Learner Journey Labs, that was when OpenAI first introduced the ability to write a GPT. Right. And I was like, oh, what's this? And now we have like 100 and I don't even know how many now.
I don't either.
It's so many in our ecosystem. And so I think that the capacity to think has been expanded so much, not just in education, but across all of our fields, where I use it as literally an extension of myself. And I think you do too. Like when I watch you use it like me, like we're doing the core thinking, but it's almost like it's expanding the rate that we think at.
Right.
And we still filter it and say like, I'm not sure if this is correct, let me vet it. But I do think it's like literally like plugging in like a rapid charger into your phone. Like it kind of turbo boosts us so we can process things faster.
No, and I think you have to have the human in the loop or the human in it. Even, I think yesterday James was writing an email and didn't really know what he wanted to say, so he plugged it into ChatGPT, and then he's like, well, I don't really like this. And I was like, well, then tell it you don't like it. And he's like, wait, I can do this? Because in our house, he's the most resistant to it. And I was like, yeah, you just have a conversation with it. Or say, if that's too formal of an email, then have it make it more conversational. And it was interesting because he went through 3 or 4 iterations before he got everything he wanted to say concisely and not so scatterbrained.
Yeah, and I think like that human in the loop component, and for those listening, if you're not familiar with the concept is really that AI can do all these automations and it has all of this power, but when there's no human interjected at key checkpoints, it doesn't give you an output that's valuable. Like that output is often superficial, it might be incorrect, and so him interacting and kind of pivoting it to make it include the things that he wanted, that was really driving that human in the loop. And I think that it doesn't always occur to people that they can literally have that 2-way conversation with it and be like, that's not really what I was trying to get across. Actually I wanted to get it across this way. So I think that's interesting that I don't think it's everyone's first instinct, but I do think it's kind of our first instinct is like, we look at an output and we're like, that's not quite what I wanted. Let's revisit it.
No, I frequently tell it, I don't like that. Do it again. And I think that's it, because you do get things that are wrong or not what you intended, or the tone is off, it's more formal, or it uses words that are very common in AI use. So then your audience knows that you used AI. Which is not necessarily a bad thing if you're using it in the correct way.
Right. And if you're using it as that human in the loop component, I think that's fine. I also have just a personal vendetta against the M dash and the downfall of the M dash as being an AI thing, because I really like them and I like to write with them, but I literally can't do it anymore because they're like, oh, you use AI. And I'll be like, I actually wrote it that time. Like, that was something I actually wrote because it had M dashes. Whereas like AI, I've got like all my little memories of like, don't use an M dash. So yeah, there's certain things in it that it'll say, and you're just like, yeah, that. We need to use more human syntax here.
Yeah, it's always a journey.
Definitely. And I think one of the things that we also connect on is I think we're very empathetic to learners. Mm-hmm. And so I do think a lot of the how do you do what you do for both of us is that at the heart of everything that you and I both try to do, we're really driven by providing people opportunities to advance in life, make a meaningful wage, feel valued, contribute to society in different ways. And I think that it's easy to love what you do when you're doing it for the right reasons like we do.
Correct. As, when I was going through my education class, it was always the kid who was behind that grabbed my heart, or the child who maybe didn't have the best home life. Mm-hmm. Those were the ones that stole my heart. And that's when we're creating content for the courses, I always go back to them. Or even when Brandon and May had the friend who we were riding in the car and she was talking about how she went to visit Santa, but she knew it wasn't the right Santa because he was African American and everybody knows that Santa is white. And she was an African American little girl, and that stopped me in my tracks because I'd never thought about, oh, well, he's always white in the movies, so she's gonna think that. So I kind of tried to play it off like, well, I've never seen Santa. Mm-hmm. If you ever seen Santa come down on Christmas, we don't know what he looks like. But again, when we're building our courses, I think we also do a good job at diversity and representation and things like that.
And I think we always come at it, and I think again, like, you've been exposed to my kids and they all think very differently. And you've been involved like my advocacy work when I've talked about neurodivergence and those types of things. And I think that we try to design from that universal design from learning perspective that anyone should be able to walk into any of our content, and learning is just one step of the journey, and it should be accessible whether you've got the right background or no background. And so, I think we just approach it all from how can we scaffold this to truly make students feel like they have those top of the mountain moments where they do it like a H5P and like they did the drag and drop and it was correct and it was really simple, but like we want them to have those moments of winning. And I think that drives a lot of what we do. And I think some of our capacity and some of that how do you do what you do is because we are driven by that, and we are trying to find and uncover new ways to do that for other people.
Right. No, that's well put. And I think it is. I think that's one of the core values of Learner Journey Labs is to make things accessible and relatable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when I think about, the pillars that we have, our 5 pillars and everything, that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And I think, we're very in the nursing world at the moment. So a lot of my research has kind of diverged into nursing. But a lot of that was driven by empathy for nursing students who, when I was on TikTok, it was like, these students just were expressing all of this frustration and how much stuff they have to know. And, so then it was like, okay, now Learner Journey Labs is kind of taking a detour into like the nursing world, because that appeared to be a high needs area for us when I was like, I'm come from the STEM background, so I get some of it. It's very difficult to learn. And it was like, let's fix it. Like,
and there's so much to learn.
Yeah. I mean, nurses hold our lives in their hands every day. So, I mean, a nurse has to be prepared for every single potential outcome, and also has to know who the point person is for different things. So I think that's, we want to be driven to help them basically increase their ability to retain that information and to make it more accessible so that we can kind of be a part of that healthcare crisis. So
yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I really like to avoid the maternal health classes.
Yeah, there's a few nursing courses that are not always my favorite because I'm not a fan of like the ick.
Yeah.
The ick factor, but
and maternal health just jumps right into the ick.
Yeah, it just gets right in there. So I think coming back to like the question we were kind of trying to answer is, you know, for both of us, how are we doing what we're doing? And I think a lot of it is we amplify our thought process using artificial intelligence or whatever it is at the time. It might even just be me having a conversation with somebody because I can learn more talking to somebody in 15 minutes than I could learn trying to teach myself. And so when I'm exposed to an expert, it's like, let me ask them all the questions.
Right.
I've never been afraid to ask questions. If anything, I'm annoying because I ask so many questions. And I think that it's also just driven from a very empathetic place that really makes us want to do as much as we can. And I think that drives us to be efficient too.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's being efficient also helps by using AI, you know, it helps us to be efficient and get the material out in the best way possible, in the best time frame possible.
Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us for our first podcast today. I hope you found it interesting. Tune in every week. We're just going to be talking about different learning topics. You can check out our website, learnerjourneylabs.com. We have a blog there. We have a TikTok presence. We have Instagram. You can also find us on LinkedIn. And feel free to join us over the next couple of weeks as we talk through the different things that we do here.
Thanks. Have a great day.